This morning, we're one-on-one with Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney. Just re-elected to her 12th term, she discusses her expectation of an increase in interest rates and her close relationship with defeated presidential candidate Hillary Clinton.
This is the Emmy Award-winning 11 News Close-Up with your host, Marvin Scott.
Hey everyone. Time magazine has described her as a tenacious, resilient legislator. She is a champion for domestic and international women's issues. Carolyn Maloney has represented New York's 12th congressional district since 1992. She was just re-elected to her 12th term. As one of Hillary Clinton's closest friends, she was one of her hardest working surrogates during the campaign. And you could say she's still reeling from the outcome of that election, like many other people. It's good to welcome back to Pix 11 News Close-Up, Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney.
Good to see you again.
You were there back in 2000 when she entered the Senate race. You were there when she got reelected. You've been a real champion. I was there with you when she announced her candidacy for president.
In my district.
In your district.
And I had the last Ready for Hillary meeting.
That was quite a rally.
And the first one.
All right. You worked hard. Secretary Clinton worked hard, didn't happen. Are you still reeling? Have you come to terms yet with the outcome?
Well, I'm heartbroken, but we have to go forward, and she has asked all of us to help her in supporting the new president-elect with a peaceful transfer of power, which is the hallmark of our democracy. And she's heartbroken, I would say. Yeah. And I find it hard to believe, Marvin, because how could all the polls be so wrong? I would read the polls every single day religiously, and they were predicting. Every single poll had her ahead, with the exception of the LA Times, from the beginning practically to the end.
Why did she fail?
Everybody's asking that question, and I don't know. The electorate was angry. They wanted change. They were angry at a Congress that wasn't responding to their, even though we had gained 15 million new jobs, many people were left behind with stagnant wages that hadn't moved for 10 years, and they were angry that they didn't feel that their economic situation was being addressed by Congress and by our leaders.
Many people said she failed to connect with the voters the way Donald Trump did. She didn't get down to those issues. Donald Trump kept saying, I'm going to get you jobs, more back to work. And we didn't hear that from Secretary Clinton. Well, she said she would create jobs, but the lack of that connection with voters is so important.
Well, if you looked at her position papers, her thoughtful speeches, she won all three debates easily. She certainly had a more substantive campaign. I literally was surprised at how many Republicans publicly endorsed her. Some of the major public policy leaders in defense and in Homeland Security came out for Hillary Clinton. So her support was deep and strong, we were surprised.
As a woman who's a champion of women's issues, were you surprised that so many women did not vote for her? I think the figure I heard was 45% of women voted for Donald Trump.
45% of white women, but women of color voted overwhelmingly for Hillary.
But still, that was a surprising figure. Why
it was surprising to me. It was surprising to me because a vote for Hillary Clinton was really a vote for yourself. No one had dedicated their lives more effectively to advance the rights of women and children than Hillary Clinton. She literally changed the dialogue. I could see such a difference in how these issues were treated. I had the opportunity to work closely with her for well over 20 years, first as First Lady, where she expanded health care to 8 million children. Then as the senator from New York, we worked very closely together on responding to the 9/11 crisis and gathering the federal money, and very closely on a bill that we didn't finish passing until 2015, which was permanent health care for the heroes and heroines and survivors of 9/11. And I was able to see her intelligence, her commitment, her resourcefulness. We had to figure out how to fund it years before we could get it funded through the regular source. We had to do it through earmarks, and she was very, very hardworking and very effective for New York. And then, of course, as Secretary of State, She announced her presidency, or her run for the presidency on Roosevelt Island, which is in the heart of my district, and it was thrilling to work for. I never thought, quite frankly, that I would ever see a woman taken seriously for president, and she was, and she got 69 million votes. And I got to tell you this, I was with her in Beijing when she gave her most famous speech that women's rights are human rights and human rights are women's rights. And it wasn't, I don't think anyone thought about women the same after that. She elevated the issues of empowerment for women in education and healthcare to a national and international level. And she stood up to practically all male leaders in the world and spoke out, and it was changing.
She won the popular vote. She got 1 million more votes than Donald Trump, but she lost the Electoral College. I think Donald Trump got 304, needed 270. Do you think some people are saying it's time to take another look at the system, that the electoral system should be abandoned and we should go on the popular vote?
I predict that she'll have over 2 million popular votes. They're still counting in California and in some other areas. I'd say that it'd be very difficult to do because you'd need a constitutional amendment, and it was part of the great compromise that our founding fathers did on the House of Representatives on population and the Senate on 2 senators for each state. So the smaller states would not go for a change. It was also the thought of our founding fathers that to have the electoral college, which is based on both the number of congresspeople and senators for each state, appointed by the governor to be seasoned, respected individuals to make sure that foreign meddling was not part of an American election. I think it would be very, very difficult to change because you would need a constitutional amendment. You'd need a 2/3 vote.
You'd never get a consensus in Congress.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, let me ask you this. What do you see as the future for Hillary Clinton? Where does she go from here? She finished politically?
Oh, she will always be contributing. She will always be leading. Just this past Wednesday, she was at the Children's Defense Fund event where she spoke out again for children, and it was the first place she had a job.
I'm glad you bring it up because we have a report on that. Let's take a look at that right now. Here was Hillary Clinton on Wednesday night.
If I had to guess, I'd guess she goes to the United Nations, leadership position there.
Thank you.
Cheers provided comfort for Hillary Clinton in her first public appearance since delivering her concession speech.
I will admit, coming here tonight wasn't the easiest thing for me. There have been a few times this past week when all I wanted to do was just to curl up with a good book or our dogs and never leave the house again.
Speaking in front of a crowd at the Children's Defense Fund annual celebration, she made an emotional plea not to lose faith in our nation.
I know that over the past week, a lot of people have asked themselves whether America is the country we thought it was. The divisions laid bare by this election run deep. But please listen to me when I say this. America is worth it. Our children are worth it.
Clinton continued to highlight the issue close to her heart on the campaign trail, helping children. She even turned emotional, thinking back to when her late mother was a child, abandoned by her parents.
And I dream of going up to her and sitting next to her and taking her in my arms and saying, look at me and listen. You will survive, and as hard as it might be to imagine, your daughter will grow up to be a United States Senator, represent our country as Secretary of State, and win more than 62 million votes for President of the United States.
Very stoic. That was quite a speech for her, and she seems to be very gracious, at least publicly. Have you spoken to her since the election?
I've been on conference calls and with the elected members of Congress and with supporters, and she said her heart was broken, and but we had to go forward, and we needed to work together for the country. And she and President Obama have been very gracious to President-elect Trump, as he has to them.
Before we go to the break, before we went to Lisa Mateo's report, you had said good position for Hillary Clinton going ahead would be
the United Nations. I think she will never stop working. She will always make a difference and will always be part of the dialogue in a positive way to advance the values of America and to advance the causes that she believes in and that she's dedicated her life towards.
Are you suggesting that this be an appointment Donald Trump make?
I think it'd be a wonderful appointment to be our ambassador to the United Nations, or she could run UNICEF, or she could run the United Nations. She could be the first woman to run the United Nations. She will continue to work and she will continue to give selflessly as she has her entire life.
Are you going to make that proposal to the Trump transition team?
I don't know if they want to hear from a Hillary Clinton advisor or a Hillary Clinton supporter, but I think it would be a very wise appointment on his part. But he has been mentioning some of his, the interesting thing about him, he ran just as hard against the Republican Party as he did the Democratic Party. Yet he's been talking about possibly appointing Cruz, Mitt Romney, and of course his strong supporter, Rudolph Giuliani.
Let's talk more about that. Let's take a break. We come back. First, I want to talk about your meeting this week with the head of the Fed, Janet Yellen, and the prospects of an increase in our interest rates. We'll take that and much more with Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney when Pix 11 News Close-Up continues. Back with New York Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney. Before the break, we were talking about a potential Trump cabinet. Not potential, he's already named some people. How do you feel about Jeff Sessions has been mentioned as Attorney General?
Well, I believe he'll be appointing him, and he's also spoken about Lieutenant General Mike Flynn.
First, how do you feel about Sessions as Attorney General?
Well, he will have to go through a confirmation process. I really do not personally know him that well, but he was an early supporter of his. He's already talked about a number of other names. We'll see if he continues to be mentioned, because he's already mentioned about 5 other names for Attorney General and then discarded them. And, you know, in Secretary of State, he started off with Gingrich, and then he went to Giuliani, and now he's talking about Mitt Romney.
And now, we're taping this program a day before his scheduled meeting with Mitt Romney. He's meeting with him on Saturday. When this airs on Sunday, he could very well have made an appointment of Mitt Romney as the Secretary of State. How do you feel about that?
Well, he has a great number of international contacts and a tremendous record in government and in the private sector. I personally do not know him, but I admire many of the things he's done. He was not my candidate for president. I strongly supported President Obama, but we need to encourage people to run for office and be part of government. And
so you're not positive on these first couple of names. What about Rudy Giuliani? I mean, he has been such a key surrogate during this campaign, and Chris Christie. What do you see for Giuliani?
Well, it's not what I see, it's what Mr. Trump sees. And who knows if he wants to give up his lobbying practice. And he has many clients that are foreign governments, and some of them are governments that we don't do business with. So I don't know how that shakes out.
How about Homeland Security?
Wow. He did a great job for 9/11. Rudy did a great job rebuilding.
You'd be supportive of that?
For Homeland Security, I would. Yes, I would.
What about Chris Christie?
I'll tell you also, the fact that New York remains target number 1. All of the chatter, we just had an attempted bomb on 23rd Street. We still remain target number 1 in this country. And he would understand the security risks and the need for the security. It's always a battle to get Homeland Security funds that are needed for the police and the fire and our special anti-terrorism unit. We do an incredible job. They apprehended the guy within 48 hours, but it's never enough. We have to prevent any effort to hurt our people.
So you would support a Giuliani for Homeland Security?
I would.
Okay, let me ask you something. Let's shift gears and talk about economy. You are the ranking member of the Joint Economics Committee, and on Thursday you had a meeting and you had Janet Yellen, who's the head of the Federal Reserve, and of course we've been hearing about increases in the interest rate, and is likely when they meet in mid-December. Is it going to happen? Are we going to get an increase?
I believe so, based on what she said. She said if we continue in a strong economy moving forward, that she doesn't see it being dismantled, her movement towards a small interest rate increase. She also said she wasn't stepping down. Earlier this week, Mary Jo White said she was stepping down, but she made it clear she was staying to the end of her term, and I believe she deserves it. She's done a good job. You have to remember that when President Obama took office, we were shedding over 700,000 jobs a month. With Democratic policies, we've been digging our way out of that red hole. We've created over 15 million new private sector jobs and cut the unemployment rate from 10% to 4.9%. And it's never good enough, but we're certainly moving in the right direction.
And what impact? I believe I saw you quoted, if I got the quote correct, that you have said that the economy does much better under a Democratic president, and the record goes back to World War II. How do you expect it's going to be once the interest rates go up and under a Republican presidency?
Well, it's interesting. It's hard to predict what happens in the future. I don't know what his policies are going to be. But it's an undisputed fact that the economy has performed better under Democratic presidents, more so than Republican, almost on every single economic indicator. And when I first went to the floor and made a speech and presented this in a report that we did in the Joint Economic Committee, the Republicans protested and they said it was wrong, and they fact-checked it, and it was absolutely correct. Alan Blinder and Mr. Watson from Princeton University also did their study that showed that the economy, by almost every single indicator, did better under a Democratic president than a Republican one.
Now, this president-elect is saying he's going to put people to work. You have many objections about our president-elect, but also you're on the same page with him on a couple of issues. You were opposed to the Iran nuclear deal. Mm-hmm. He says he is vehemently opposed to that and might make some changes. Also, a thing that you have been very strong on is working on America's infrastructure, something that a president-elect says he is going to tackle head-on as soon as he gets into office.
He also said that he would support paid leave for the birth of a child. That's one of my bills. I passed the House twice, has never passed the Senate, and America is alone with Papua New Guinea and not supporting paid leave for the birth of a child of our mothers. But infrastructure is, I've been mystified at how the Republicans fight it, and it'll be interesting to see how his plans for infrastructure collide with the Republican establishment that has fought any form of stimulus to the economy. Infrastructure creates jobs, it puts money, it's efficient, it's quality of life, economic development. I'm all for infrastructure. It depends also what his plan is. Does it stand alone as an infrastructure project, or does he add it to a lot of other things that you may not support?
So you see some positive things coming out of this president?
I will certainly support him in the areas that we agree, and I believe Democrats will. But then areas that we disagree, you'll see a massive fight.
What kind of a president do you expect Trump will be?
I really don't know. I'm always hopeful. I certainly support a peaceful transfer of power. I wish him well. When an American president succeeds, our country succeeds. I want our country to succeed. His ideas of repatriation, of bringing the money from overseas back and pumping it into the American economy, hopefully into infrastructure, I certainly would support that. So you have to see what the plan really is. He threw out ideas, but he didn't really flush out in great detail like Mrs. Clinton did most of her policy statements. So you have to see what it is that he finally comes forward with. But it was the strangest election I've ever seen. He not only was running against the Democrats, in many cases he was running against the Republicans. So he really was sort of an independent. It was an election for
the history books.
It was the biggest upset, and I don't know how all the pollsters got it wrong. It was a huge surprise, and I wish him well.
Okay, we're going to take a break. Come back. Hillary Clinton didn't crack the glass ceiling, but you're cracking the glass ceiling because there's a project very dear to your heart and you're working on. I want to hear about it. The creation of a Women's National Museum. We'll touch on that when we come back. Pix 11 News Close-Up. Stay with us. We're back with New York Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney. You guys are getting settled in Congress. There's a bit of divisiveness going on right now. You're a minority leader. Nancy Pelosi seems to be getting a challenge from some segments of your congressional delegation. What's her future? Is she going to stay in that position?
She'll be reelected. Everybody's angry. We're angry over the election. The electorate is angry.
For the Democratic loss.
She wasn't running for president. She has been a champion for many of the issues for New York, such as the 9/11 health and compensation bill that brought $8 billion to the city, such as the Second Avenue subway that brought over $1.4 billion, the East Side Access over $2.5, the Cusco Bridge $690 million, the L train, which was $5 billion, $1 billion for the L train. This is all in my district, so compounded around the state. So she has been a champion and supporter of the legislative initiatives of the New York delegation, and a tremendous champion and supporter for the initiatives that I brought to her that helped my district and helped my state.
And one of those initiatives of yours was getting billions of federal funds toward the Second Avenue subway that seems to be almost in the making for the past century. You held a news conference just this past week talking about the question, will the subway be running before the end of the year as has been promised? And Greg Locker keeps following up on it.
Prendergast says it will be, but the main point is that it's going to open. When I went to Congress, I wanted to build a Second Avenue subway. People laughed at me. They said it would never happen. It's been a labor of love. The MTA is extraordinary, and it is the biggest project not only in New York City, not only in New York State, but in the entire nation. And on day one, will move over 200,000 New Yorkers and make their quality of life better, improve the economic development along the Strip. The property values are already going forward, and the regional plan says the one thing that could help the economic development of the city of New York more than anything would be the Second Avenue subway, and we have $1.5 billion committed in the capital plan to go up to 125th Street.
Okay, so can you answer this question? When is it going to begin running?
Prendergast, the head of the MTA, says the end of December.
And you hold to that. It's going to happen, right?
He's holding to it.
And you're saying it is.
But
okay.
I don't want to put pressure on them if they don't get all of their safety tests done. It will open in December or January.
We got to talk something for the remaining time we have here, which is something that's very dear to your heart, and you're really at the forefront of this because you introduced the legislation to create a commission to explore creation of a National Women's Museum. I know this is very important to you.
Well, we passed the bill in the last Congress to create a commission. This is how you review things on the mall. They came back and recommended that it be part of the Smithsonian, that it be part of the mall, that it be publicly and privately funded, and a whole structure to make it happen. Now we have to write another bill and pass it. It was bipartisan. It was one of the few bipartisan efforts in the last Congress, and I hope in this Congress, since President-elect Trump likes to build things, this should be a project he should get behind and show women of America that he values their contributions to America and is going to help us build that museum. And guess who'll be in that museum? Hillary Rodham Clinton, along with Susan B. Anthony and everybody else.
Next ambassador to the United Nations, right?
I hope so. I hope so.
All right, well, the Trump transition team probably heard you this morning. Okay.
But I say New York has played such a massive role in the women's rights movement. And to pass this museum and to have it on the mall, do you know there's not one in the entire country? They have museums on stamps, on law and order, everything around the mall, but not half the population. It's long past due, and I think women are feeling very, very, very sad about not achieving cracking that last glass ceiling, even though she got 63 million votes.
Another passion of yours. Another passion. Pandas. You've been trying to get a couple of Chinese pandas to New York. Any success yet?
We're working on it. Mayor de Blasio and Governor Cuomo are now on board. We're having an event in February at the Waldorf, one of the last before they close it down. And pandas are symbols of good luck, and we need some good luck in New York.
Okay.
It's time for the pandas.
I have no time. I want to mention that you were the first woman black belt in Congress. Okay. Carolyn Maloney, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to have you here.
Always a pleasure. Nice to see you.
Come back soon. Happy Thanksgiving.
Great. Happy Thanksgiving.
And that'll do it for our program this week. If you have any questions or comments or wish to see this broadcast again, check us out. Log on to our website, pix11.com/newscloseup. I'm Marvin Scott. Enjoy the rest of the weekend and happy Thanksgiving.